Welcome to Destined Places, where location truly influences our astrological journey. I'm your host, Marilyn, and my path has been shaped by travel and self-discovery from a young age. I grew up in Australia, exploring the vast landscapes with my family as a teenager. At 20, I embarked on a journey to England, sparking a desire to see more of the world. In my early 30s, I completed studies in human resource management, a field I dedicated myself to for over 2 decades. Toward the end of my HR career, I sensed a shift, a calling to something deeper. That shift took root on the Camino de Santiago, a transformative 800-kilometer journey that forever changed me. Walking that ancient path, I felt a soul-level awakening that inspired me to create a Soul Awakening, a business devoted to guiding others through astrology and the powerful connections between the places we inhabit or visit and the paths we walk in life. Shortly afterward, I felt drawn to sell my home in Melbourne and relocate to the Greek island of Crete, where I now call home. I invite you to join me on this exploration of how our geographical settings shape our life paths, relationships, and personal growth, all through the lens of astrology. I've reached out to a lifelong conversationalist, Sarah Maxwell, to help me share my story and bring my life path into focus, setting the tone of the journey this podcast will explore. I truly hope you enjoy our conversation as much as I did. So here we go.
There's nothing more exciting than sitting down with the founder of a new podcast. It's reminiscent of a little baby bursting out of the womb into a fresh new world to discover the power of their crackling new voice. Today, that founder is Marilyn Daniels, astrologer and astrocartographer, ready to launch Destined Places into the podcast stratosphere. But she wasn't always aware of her guiding stars. Growing up in Brisbane, Australia, she worked in hospitality for a decade before returning to study and eventual work in human resources for more than 10 years. All the while, Marilyn had a long-held dream to walk the 800-kilometer Camino de Santiago across northern Spain. And in 2012, she walked that path and deepened her understanding with each sacred step. Within a year of that pilgrimage, she founded her business, A Soul Awakening, where she unites astrology and travel to guide others to discover their own destined places, finding alignment through self-discovery and spiritual growth. In her early 50s, something unimaginable happened. She sold her Melbourne home and asked the universe, where should I go for 4 months that's close to water, cheaper, and less populated than Australia? She awoke the next morning with the answer. Crete, a place she'd never even heard of at the time. Trusting her intuition, she followed the calling and went, never realizing that after 4 months was up, she'd return and live there for the past 10 years. In retrospect, the cosmic dots surely line up. Surrounded by the Aegean Sea, the ancient history, and the myth of Greece, her exploration of astrocartography would be such that she now guides others to their own destined places. Thank you, Marilyn, for trusting me in the refreshed launch of your new podcast, Destined Places, Align Journeys with Your Astrology. So, Marilyn, are you ready to open up?
Hello, Sarah. Yes, happily here to open up.
Gosh, you're perfect for this. And we have a lot of ground to cover today, but I'd love a glimpse of daily life in Crete. So for a lot of us, it's a dreamy place. Some of us have heard of it, but yet I've never been. So through your eyes, what is daily life like in Crete?
Crete really is a tapestry of contrast, Sarah. It's ancient, it's modern, it's rugged, it's serene, and clearly it's home to many, many historical sites. But life here is pretty simple and it follows its own really comfortable and steady rhythm that changes with the seasons. And during the heat of the liveliness of summer, the island's pretty busy with a lot of tourists, but come winter, there's a serene calmness that settles over everything, with the views of Lithki Ora as it's known, which is called the White Mountains, that are covered in snow. So living by the seasons has been a refreshing shift for an
Mm.
Aussie girl. And I've come to appreciate the simple joys of eating what's fresh and local. And I'm grateful to live in a seaside village just 20 minutes from the Venetian old town of Hanya. So, in general, my days are a blend of work, friends, and the simple joy of village life. There's the sea to walk along most days, and then there's also walking through the Plateria or local square, where I can bump into many of the locals who are out having their local gathers in the village, are having a drink of coffee.
Mm.
And it's a really beautiful community feel that has been woven into their life for generations. I also take the opportunity to get out in the Cretan countryside quite regularly with a couple of different walking groups and just explore the landscape. And you often hear the sounds of the clinking bells of goat bells, the occasional shepherd that's moving his flock. And you
Mm.
can always see the blue sea. So it's a pretty quiet pace of life, yet it's also very grounding.
Wow. Oh, that was very poetic. And you mentioned that you're an Aussie girl, and here you are in Crete. And what were you like as a kid in Brisbane, Australia? Because we're basically trying to match some of the dots that they landed you in Crete. But first, I want an image of this Brisbane little girl.
Yeah, Brizzy. Well, actually, as a local, Brisbane is called Brizzy, so it just came out of my mouth just naturally then. So, I was always a really curious kid, and interestingly, I was always really fascinated by the changes in the moon phases, and constantly wondering what was actually laying outside my backyard. I had a love for geography and history during school, during my younger years of school, and also to draw about different people and places. Brisbane at the time of me growing up was a pretty laid back lifestyle and therefore gave me plenty of freedom to actually explore. In those exploring years, books were a good companion for me. And interestingly, these were always non-fiction books, which still today is the case.
Hmm.
No, no fiction books in my world. So looking back, I can certainly see the early curiosity about people and the world was ultimately something that led me to travel and to expanding my fascination with human behavior. Interestingly, eventually guiding me to study astrology.
Hmm. That's so interesting. As a little kid, being interested in the moon, did you know of any other kids that were interested in the moon, or did you feel that you were different in some ways because of that?
Well, I learnt many years later when I started tapping into astrology. I'm actually a Cancerian sun sign for people who might know their sun sign. So I'm a Cancerian sun sign. I'm also a Cancerian ascendant, and I'm a Cancerian. I have Cancer in Venus. So that's a lot of Cancerian water energy. And the moon is the natural ruler of Cancer. I
Mm.
had no idea as a kid, but I was quite fascinated just watching this lovely illuminating light in the sky that just changed sizes
Hmm.
all the
I love that.
time.
I like it's so interesting in life, isn't it? As you get older, how things make sense. You know, how you just described just a fascination with the big light in the sky, and all of a sudden, with more understanding, it all just makes a lot more sense. And in light of that, what would we need to understand about your life, and maybe we already are, to be able to grasp the astrology coach you would later become?
But to understand the astrology coach that I've become, you'd need to know that my journey was shaped by a lifelong love for travel and self-development. I was deeply curious about the world and people and what drives human behavior and how we connect and the patterns that shape our lives. And this curiosity I was very grateful for because my parents traveled around Australia for a period of time
Mm.
and I got the chance to go beyond just my birth city. And like you've already shared in the beginning of this, it was the number of years later that I was probably in my late 20s, early 30s, I think it may have been, that I'd learned about and read up about the Camino de Santiago, which is a particular Camino journey. And I just knew that I was curious about going. So, like you also said, walking 800 kilometers, it's a long journey, but it wasn't just a physical journey or a physical challenge. It was the journey within. And
Mm.
that's the one thing that sparked the profound change and eventually led me to birth my business of a soul awakening. So the that helps you help people understand the coaching sides of things as to the journey in there. But as far as the astrology,
Mm.
I see astrology as more than observing the stars. It's the path into our human experience. And my own path, as we're discussing, has shown me that where we are, both physically and spiritually, shapes who we're becoming. And my aim is to bring insights to the through the Journey Pathway program that I offer and the sense of alignment with their path for people and helping them to view their life through the lens of planetary influences and the unique places that shape them, like I have. I'm a
Mm.
Brisbane girl. I've traveled across the world. I worked in Beijing in China for a period of time, and now I'm here in Crete in Greece.
Mm.
So the blend of exploration and astrology together with self-awareness has greatly shaped me. And it's this essence of the work that I share today.
Mm. That's really interesting. I can see this pathway from your own experiences to then helping others. And would you say that without the travel that you did, that you've just described, and without having done the Camino, would your life be very different?
Oh, hugely so. Sorry, that was
Yeah,
a really
I.
interesting, it very, very much so different
Mm.
in that it was the path that was set for me.
Mm.
I just unknowingly chose to follow it at the time, and now I'm more have a greater awareness of what the path is that I intuitively choose to follow
Okay,
it.
hold on. We have to, there's a moment here that we didn't plan this moment, but I want to dig into destiny for a sec because you're kind of touching on it. Because all of a sudden I made it as if there was a choice there, right? I said, oh, imagine you didn't do those things. What do you believe, and from what you've studied in terms of destiny, meaning is it possible that you wouldn't have done those things, or it was a cause set in motion? It was going to happen.
I would honestly feel it's more the latter.
Mm.
As an astrologer, there is a destined path that each human being will take. However, I'm also a woman who firmly, strongly believes in free will.
Mm.
So we might take left and right turns rather than going straight through the path, but they're all part of the learning. Those experiences then guide us to do the next step of the journey.
Mm.
So at any time, destined path is there. However, so is free will. So it's a real little balancing act for many people, and I'm certainly one that it's balancing with.
Good. Thank you for like same. And I wanted to kind of go there for a second because I was curious how they go together. You explained that
Right.
beautifully, actually. I really kind of that landed. And with that, these, like you say, the free will and choices that you make. When you did the Camino de Santiago, which is a pilgrimage that a lot of people do know about, did you hope on some level that it would completely change your life?
I wasn't sure about the hoping side of things, but there was an intuitive knowing that
Mm.
I had to go and do it.
Mm.
And in all sincerity, I didn't know at the start of it by any means why, but as we've shared, I'm a woman who loves travel. I love geography. I love history. And it is just an abundant supply of it, walking from point A to point B and getting to the end in Santiago de Compostela and being in a cathedral, an enormously beautiful historic cathedral with thousands of other people who had also completed the journey on the same day. And this happens every single day. And then the ancient pilgrim completion by the priests in a number of languages, interestingly. And this big Rufanian, I think is how it's pronounced, it literally gets floated across the air inside the church that fumigates people. And it's been done for centuries. So being physically walking it and being somebody who is walking in the footsteps of millions of people before me, obviously, getting to the last step of it, was really quite a monumental internal shift that was going on. And I thought at the end of the day, I'm not sure if I anticipated a change or was expecting a change or looking forward to a change, whatever that may be, the change happened.
Mm,
It
mm,
naturally happened. I don't think anybody couldn't change if they did such a journey. It's an antiquity age journey that people do it for all different reasons.
mm,
And so I wrote many years later, after doing it, I wrote 5 different blog posts that showed the journey and my own awakening within it.
mm.
And I also, the only time in my life, Sarah, I wrote a poem about it. And it fulfills the journey in essence that you start for no real reason. You just know you're
Mm.
going to do it. And then come the end of it, you understood why you did it,
Oh,
if that makes sense.
you're like right on this something for me that's really intriguing because you said when I use the word hope, you then went with, but I had intuition. And I would love to know if you can, have you always had a relationship with your intuition, like even as a kid?
Yeah, intuition has been my best friend all my life. And I have learnt to trust it more as I've gotten older and have faith that I will be guided to wherever and whyever that
Hmm.
I'm being guided to. So, so many people can have, well, I'm going to go and do this and have a defined reason for it. I'm not that average sort of a woman in context of that. And I honor people who get out to do that. But my intuition is the one that says, this is a life, Marilyn. You need to live this life. It's yours to live. So whatever you're going to follow, trust it, have faith in it. And mine is that intuition.
Thank you. Okay, got that. Because I think, and this question may be different now that you've just said that, but when I first heard that you sold your house, like, in your 50s, you sell your Melbourne house, you ask the universe, I said this in the introduction, you ask the universe, where should I go? Like, was there fear and doubt or uncertainty, or did you have such a relationship with your intuition that you just trusted that there'd be an answer the next day?
Clearly the latter. I knew I needed to go to do something. It was a particular turning point because you made reference to the age line. That's actually quite a significant timeline from an astrological perspective for every human being. So for listeners who aren't that age yet, rest assured it will present to you, and maybe not quite as in the manner that mine did, but I was aware that other things were changing in my life. I knew that the career that I was in for 20 years in HR was changing its cycle as well. And I thought, well, I'm gone for 4 months. It's like a long holiday. I'm accustomed, and I had been for many years, to going somewhere like living in Oz. It, it's such a long journey to anywhere. I would never leave Australia for less than 2 weeks. So it was very common for me to go somewhere for 2 months, 2.5 months, 3 months. And I thought, well, 4. What's 4? Go for 4. Totally trusting that I would return. Then something happened. But anyways, so my intuition is my good friends, and I just have faith and trust that I will always be guided by it.
So I've just gotten back from a 3-month trip. So I'm thinking, oh, there's
There
going to
you
be
go.
people listening, Marilyn, to your story, and there's just so many light bulbs going off for them, or maybe more questions, like they are for me too. Like, oh, now I want to know more about this and more of the understandings that you have. But before we kind of go there, talk to me about flying into Crete. So you're in the airplane and you're flying over the Aegean Sea. What did you know for sure at that moment?
Well, firstly, I didn't fly. I've only ever flown in and out of Crete on one occasion. For me, the beauty, one of the beautiful aspects of living on a small island compared to Australia as a large island, is that everybody moves, the vast majority of locals per se, they'll move around by boat, by ferry. So I'd flown into Athens, and then I caught a taxi down to Piraeus port, and that's where I caught a ferry. To help me with the time zone is why I chose to do it that way, so that I could sleep overnight. But literally waking up on a ferry, on a boat, and just seeing the sea around you and the unknown, no lands, and then docking in Hanya in Suda port. And I just thought, okay, you're here now. I wonder what you're going to do.
Hmm.
And my first day, it's literally just tipped over very recently in the beginning of November, the beginning that's now the beginning of my 10th year here. And I knew nothing, absolutely nothing, not even how to say good morning.
Hmm.
Didn't know the lie of the land in any way, shape, or form. And the 4 months was truly incredible. And I just kept having faith and trust that I was meant to be here for whatever reason I was meant to come for 4 months.
Your story is such a story of trust. Like it's incredible because you leave, is that right? You leave after 4 months, so you don't just continue to stay for 10 years. So talk to me a little bit about leaving this idyllic place that your intuition has led you to, and then you go back to your other life. What was that like?
Oh, I actually really struggled. I'd left Crete because I had an Aussie friend come over and stay with me for a couple of weeks. We went to Athens, spent some time in the mainland doing a couple of things over in the mainland. Then we went to Turkey. She left after a couple of weeks. I stayed in Turkey a little bit longer. Something inside me was saying, you don't want to go back yet, as in back to Oz, back to Australia.
Mm.
So I changed my flight. I went to New Zealand for a month. And I'd been to New Zealand on 7 previous occasions. I have a very good friend there. And something was just saying, you don't want to go. But I eventually went back and I flew into Melbourne, and something had just shifted. I don't know how to express this. I don't want to say horribly, but I just was not comfortable. And I rang my dad, who was alive at the time, and he said to me, Marilyn, what's the matter? And I said, I don't want to be here. And
Mm.
I'd been somebody who had traveled extensively, and I'd always looked forward to the long haul to come home. This time, no.
Mm.
So within the next 3.5 months, I think it was, I was back on a plane to come the long haul, back on the last journey to the ferry, to then, and I asked the universe along the way, okay, if you want me to stay, I'll make the commitment to stay, but you have to help me find a home. There were
Mm.
4 sitting here waiting for me when I returned.
Wow.
I lived in one of them for 3.5 years. Then things happened, and I eventually bought a home here.
I I've got so many thoughts about people having that experience that you did of I just don't feel like I belong here anymore or I'm not comfortable. What makes people not leave? Because I could sense that you've had this long-standing trusting relationship with your intuition and the universe. But what do you think happens for people that they feel everything you felt, but they don't leave? They don't get back on the plane for another long haul. They stay in it.
That's a really, really good question because I haven't personally experienced it, so I have no
Mm.
foundation to understand their experience of not following through.
Mm.
And for me, my only understanding would be for them that you missed what
Mm.
is quite probably an incredible opportunity and chapter or stage of your life that you were given.
Mm.
And because I really do feel very, very strongly that we may have been here before, we may come again, as in popping in and out of lifetimes, but we're here now. And it's from my perspective, it's extremely important to recognize that you're here to do something, whatever that may be, is whatever that may be. But at the end of the day, if you deny yourself that opportunity for whatever reason, and there's never a good or bad or right or wrong reason for it, if you choose not to, then yeah, you've denied yourself the opportunity to actually experience something that it would be beneficial for your personal growth, for your self-development, for your my business is called a soul awakening. So for
Yeah,
to
perfect
open
name.
to open up and literally awaken to what is the next step? What is the next stage of your life, of who you are to become? So That would
It's
be
an
my
interesting,
perception of
I almost set you
the.
up with the question because I loved how you struggled to have that understanding because a lot of people see it like a choice. I feel in how you were describing it for you is, well, of course I must go then. Of course I must keep going, and and again, we get to understand and get to know you more, this incredible relationship with trusting your life's path. And in light of that trust that you have for your life path, you move from human like HR to astrology and onto astrocartography. Tell me a little bit about how the heck does that happen? I mean, did you see stars on the Camino? Like, tell us.
In all honesty, Sarah, like leaving HR was a really difficult decision for me. It really was. I had a 20-year career that was really successful, and I truly valued the variety of all the roles that I held in that 20-year career. And the first was in 10 years in the public sector, which for many people is following that steady 9 to 5 kind of routine. But then I stepped out of the corporate framework, which led me to opportunities to work, live and work across the country, across Australia. So both the public and private sectors opportunities that gave me that I was given, there was one key element that I always connected with different people in different ways, in very unique ways, whether it had been from supporting employees during career transitions, redeployment, my roles also in dismissals in FIFO world, which is fly in, fly out. All of them showed me the other layers of the human behavior, of human resilience and adaptability. And so I, throughout my whole career, I again let my intuition guide me, and when I look back on it now, I think to myself, like, yeah, there's this inner knowing that said, okay, take on this job because you will learn something about another layer of human behavior. Take on this role because you will now learn another integration of myself in how I manage me in context of going into an organization to downsize an arm of its business. People don't particularly like you, but then people learn to trust you, that you're actually there to help them. And yeah, it truly was a very, very rewarding 20-year period of my life. So I was, I found the decision quite difficult, but something inside me kept saying, your time's up.
Hmm.
And by then I had studied astrology formally and
Hmm.
I was continuing through to do so. And I thought, all right, now I have to just take that almighty leap of faith, which was a huge leap of faith, and put
Hmm.
myself into the framework of becoming an astrologer.
Hmm.
Coming back into things like the Camino, learning to understand my inner knowing. And when those big decisions were being made as far as the career shifts, or not the career shifts, the positions within HR, the shifts in there, that I was open to taking on those new challenges,
Hmm.
which comes back into the question that you just asked me previously, though. I can only be guided by my own journey internally and externally as to why I would choose to do what I do, others rather than somebody maybe not doing it. But the same guidance of the different roles across the HR world was what led me to Spain to walk the Camino.
Hmm.
And that really was a very transformative journey that inspired, as we've said, to create my business. And so the next stage just felt like the natural progression for me to take that big leap into astrology and
And when you
coaching.
talk, like when you're chatting about your background, I'm so glad you talked about that 20 years and the chat, that leap of faith. I think a lot of people will really relate to that and how hard it is to make that leap. Yet I can see so many of the qualities that you honed for all those years are now still with you as you relate to people. But just nut it out just that little bit about astrology, because astrology wasn't discovered on Instagram, was it? Like astrology has existed for a long time. So how have you married your sort of like HR-ness and your the ancient astrology? Like, tell me a little bit about that marriage.
Okay. In all honesty, it's because I was studying astrology during the last 7 or 8 years of my HR career. I learnt my astrology. I learnt my horoscope.
Mm,
And I have tools that I can see what transits are happening in the heavens and how that may have an impact on human beings down below, so to speak. And so I learned to understand that the play, and I say play in a very positive way, how astrology could impact me. I really saw it very, very clearly. And by then, I'd also learnt that my own path up to that point was clearly sitting there in a horoscope of times, of progressionally timelines. But one thing that really, really struck me was that I could be in a position as a HR professional as to how I could communicate with other people because of what I knew from my own astrology.
got it.
And so I then
Got
began
it.
to trust that great leap of faith. I thought,
Got it.
yeah,
And then
let's do this.
astrocartography, what is that? Because that I'm just guessing by putting two words together that makes sense to me. So, what does it mean, please?
In essence, it is the combination of astrology as an ancient art, gift, tool, and geography. It
Okay.
literally then, from a technical perspective, but very simple technical perspective, somebody like myself as an astrologer, we put your horoscope across the world map. And those planetary placements that are in your horoscope then literally show lines in different locations around the world. So the essence in your horoscope correlates with the world map. And then you can go to some of these locations, to your sun line, to your Mercury line, to your Saturn line, to whatever line it is, to whatever stage of life you're in, to then learn more about yourself, more about the journey that you're on, how those experiences along that journey are going to help you to actually continue to the next stage. I hope that made sense.
That's no, that was excellent. In what what my mind went to? What's the difference between knowing about it, meaning it's going to happen anyway? What's the value of me knowing my lines across? I mean, I've moved around my whole life, so I've got lots of lines, I'm sure. What would be the benefit of me knowing about them ahead of time, perhaps, possibly, or even in retrospect?
That's a really fun question because they're like anything in life, Sarah, and astrology is no different in this regard, nor is astrocartography. There is a really positive aspect to the lines that we will go to, but then there's some pretty serious lessons that need to be learnt along the way. And so you literally find yourself in a location in the world that you hadn't been before. And yeah, initially things are going to feel really quite cozy and comfortable until you really start integrating what the energy of that planetary position is doing.
Mm,
And then the work comes in. And that's from my perspective, that's you and I and any human being. That's our evolution as a human being, our growth,
mm,
allowing ourselves to find ourselves in a position of self-discovery, to
mm,
learn more about who we are and what we're actually here to be doing, how
mm.
we're going to be doing it, and why we're doing it, all those questions. That's where the lessons come in when we go to these different lines. It's not always bed and roses in a Venus line.
Got it.
It's not always great communication along a mercurial line. It's like anything in life. You've got to find the harmony in it
Mm,
because something isn't always going to continue that way. We evolve. We have to learn things.
mm.
We're given lessons. We're given experiences to have lessons to learn.
I love you use that word harmony because the word that kept coming to me was alignment, like lining up your lines and your understanding, almost like this sort of alignment of getting in harmony, I guess, with your life. And so that was really intriguing, and it might lead to this question that's just like begging to be asked, in my view, is why create this podcast? Like, why is it important to you, and why now?
Oh, wow.
That's a lot. Just start with
Honest.
why create this podcast. Go with that one.
Well, honestly, the podcast just felt like a natural extension.
Mm, Hmm.
It literally is on my own journey and the work that I offer through a soul awakening and through Destined Places that, you know, that I can share the wisdom of astrocartography, which is a really impressive blend of astrology and geography, and to where you're being called to go to learn something on a deeper level about who you are. And so being able to share that to a wider group of listeners to understand that there's always choices in life. Are you open to taking on those choices and learning experiences where they take you, why they take you, how they change you, how they help you to evolve and to grow? And so for me, this podcast opens the doorway into that very understanding that, sheds some light on my own journey and those of others, because I will be certainly interviewing other people who have ventured beyond their own birth locations. But it's to offer guidance and to advice in
Hmm.
how do you want to live your life? And there's a really key word there: live your life.
Hmm. And who, with all those guiding and that real clarity again with your intuition and intentionality with the new podcast, who do you hope's listening?
Well, I really feel that it's reaching seekers who are curious about the mysteries of life and who feel those pulls towards self discovery, who have a greater yearning for understanding and a deeper resonance with the places that they live in or they
Mm.
travel to or they even dream about,
Mm.
and to open listeners to, what powerful alignments we have and who we're becoming with where we choose to be. And I can only hope and imagine that connecting with those who are curious, perhaps even on the verge of discovering something that's transformative within themselves, or are drawn to the stories and the insights that will be shared here on this podcast, that I'm planting a seed
Mm.
to ask them to have faith, to have trust in your intuition, and to step into the unknown and see where it takes you. It's There you go. They're really good. Astrocartography and astrology are really good tools for guidance and empowerment.
And I feel like you've just unfolded what's coming next, because your whole journey has been an example of your innate capacity to trust, to allow your intuition to guide you. And in that way, as you've now spoken, who's going to be listening and why this podcast, we sort of got a vision of how it's going to be. Because when Marilyn has a has a path, it kind of just happens. So we kind of know that from you. We just learned that. So I really appreciate you for sharing yourself and drawing me in the way you have, and just giving me the opportunity and trusting me enough to allow you to unfold it. I really look forward to all the episodes and all that you've created already. This is going to be a very exciting journey.
Thank you, Sarah. It's been an absolute pleasure to have a chat with you.
Thank you for joining us on Destined Places. I hope you're feeling inspired by the powerful ways that location shapes our astrological journeys. To explore more about my work, including personal consultations, my online program, and insightful soul travel blogs that reveal astrocartography's unique influences, visit asoulawakening.com. And if you know someone who'd benefit from this episode, share it with them today. Join us next time for more captivating insights into how location truly matters.